Then we have the last speaker, so
We win, you lose.
I'm only a junior. I'm only going to be 15.
okay, first question.
I think he's already answered all these.
I know he's already answered. You have 90 seconds to answer each question. All right, the first question. Will you pledge to fully repeal Obamacare?
Yeah, it's unconstitutional. Absolutely. I pledge to repeal Obamacare. It's unconstitutional. It needs to go away.
Second
For good.
question. We're in a war on terror. Who are we fighting?
Yeah, we're fighting radical Islam. And, you know, I look back and I worked in the Center for Operations Plans and Policy in the War on Terror at U.S. Special Operations Command, where they are the lead element globally. And it's ugly. I've gone into other countries, had to work with their military operations for counterterrorism training. Folks, it's not a country this time where they wear a uniform. It's a global war. We were operating in 120 nations. And we need to realize that these people are patient and they are not just going to go away. Yes, we eliminated Osama bin Laden, but the radical Islamic movement is not at an end, and we will have to continue to protect ourselves.
That's right.
We do need health care reform. What would be your plan?
Well, when we look at health care, constitutionally, I guess they can try to hide it under that as part of the welfare of the country. But I think the first thing we need to do is we need to strategically align the healthcare system. I work in healthcare. I've worked with every medical school and teaching hospital in Florida. And we take a look at, number one, we need tort reform. And it's amazing to me how in this state we can't get that done. But it costs the doctors a lot of money for their insurance, costs the providers, so we got to get rid of tort reform. And we need to get where doctors and hospitals don't have to prescribe duplicative or unnecessary tests just to get paid or to avoid lawsuits. And we need to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think the first thing we got to do is create an environment that will help cut these costs and let private sector provide the services.
We all know the Paul Ryan plan does not affect anyone 55 years and older with regards to Medicare. Do you endorse the Paul Ryan plan, and why or why not?
Yeah, I know there's a lot being said about this, and only this person or this person supports the Ryan plan. And it's like I said at Palm Beach REC a couple weeks ago and many other times. If we have to vote yes or no, I vote yes for the Ryan plan. If we have the luxury of time to tweak it a little, to make it maybe for me what might be more fair for someone 54 or 53, I would like to do that. But first, I support it. I would vote for it. If we have the opportunity to make it a little different, I would. In that, if you're 53 and you've been working since you're 21 and you've already been contributing for 30 years, I'd like to give you some consideration, maybe have a little bit of a sliding scale in there. But we got to do something until we have a better product. I would vote for the Ryan plan. I would just want to make sure all options are looked at and considered.
What do you think is the biggest problem with our economy?
Folks, this is a complex problem. I've chaired a lot of MBA thesis research on offshoring and outsourcing. I was the lead faculty in the Global MBA for Phoenix. We got to recognize the fact, yeah, our government spending is a problem. We got to fix that. But we're 5% of the world. And we're now competing against the other 95% of the world everywhere on the planet. We look at China, 1.2 billion people. Asia has 57% of the world, by the way, with China and India having 40%. China is now, by many measures, the largest producer of goods on the planet, the largest exporter. They have $5,000 a year labor for unskilled jobs, and they have virtually no patent laws. What they do is they reach out and they just steal people's patents, the industrialized nations. And most companies will tell you their two biggest costs are personnel burden or labor and the research and development of their products. We're going to have to align with the other industrialized nations to get countries like China and Brazil in our own hemisphere from stealing our research and development and robbing us of our economic development and our economic power. That's got to happen, and we need better treaties and trade agreements, which then we go back to the U.S. Senate. But we got to protect our investment. We need high-tech industry in this country, and we need to align all the companies in America into the value chain of the market in which they compete in, and give rewards to companies for hiring U.S. companies and keep the jobs here and bring high-tech manufacturing here and better train our workforce for the jobs of the future. We are going to have to upgrade our education.
Will you sign a pledge that you will not support any form of fixed rail public transportation?
Any form of public transportation, would you include
Fixed
taxis
rail.
and
Fixed rail.
Yes, I'm against the fixed rail. I think that we can look at the rail that we have in Florida, and it's very unproductive. You can go look at it, nobody's riding on it. It also concerns me, is this one of the steps to kind of herd us into our little communities in this one world government concept, and we got to stop that. Do I get to take all my extra time at the end?
No. You're just giving up free airtime. What are we going to do to eliminate our dependence on foreign oil?
You know, a lot of this is by design. It's really pretty simple. Number one, we need to lift the ban on onshore drilling. We need to look at offshore drilling and let our companies compete in that marketplace as well, especially when you get outside the 200-mile zone where we can't control it. We're going to have to increase our domestic oil production as well as our refinery capacity, because just pumping the oil out of the ground is not going to help. So we got to refine it as well. We need to get the Department of Energy and the EPA facilitating this process instead of constantly blocking it. And then I think for a lot of our domestic use that's non-vehicular, we need more nuclear energy as well. We're only about 19%, and it's proven itself very, very well over many decades, going back to the nuclear submarines. Those guys have been riding nuclear submarines around for 50 or 60 years and never had a single incident.
Should there be public unions?
I am not a proponent of unions in government. And I think that's the wrong place. I think government employees are there to provide a service to the citizens. And I certainly don't like the idea of the government collecting union dues and paychecks.
Tell us your philosophy on subsidies and earmarks.
Yeah, it's simple. Don't need them. And I'm a farmer. I have a nursery license. So, I mean, even with the agriculture piece, I think that when we look at earmarks, and I've played the little earmark game one time, I mean, the way it used to work, and I guess it's probably still very similar, anything under $10 million they could add on and didn't raise a lot of scrutiny. And when I sat on the Pentagon committees, we used to play that little game all the time with the Congress and go in there with a pet program or whatever. It's going to create jobs in somebody's congressional district, and then they can just tack it onto some bill. So we need to stop the earmarks. We need a balanced federal budget amendment that will help alleviate a lot of the long-term issues that we're dealing with right now, like with the debt ceiling. We're going to have to balance our budget. We're going to, you know what, folks, we got to cut our spending, but this country operates off selling products and services. And this is going to go back to, it's like anybody in business knows, you got to manage your budget and cut costs and waste, but you've got to sell more stuff. We've got to do a better job selling our products and our services against the other 95% of the world. And a lot of that's going to come back to having a better trained workforce, protecting our patents, and having better treaties and trade agreements that are more conducive to U.S. industry and rewarding American companies for hiring American companies. And then we can get the jobs here and keep them here, but we need the high-paid jobs for future generations. We got to compete more effectively in the global economy, just like everybody in business right here in Pinellas or Hillsborough.
There's a budget crunch and you have to reduce spending. Which of these agency budgets would you reduce? EPA, DOE, FDA?
Geez, that's a lot of letters. Okay, I got the little book, right? And I look in the little book and I don't see none of those letters in here.
What is your opinion of climate change science?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's more than an opinion. You know, we can go back and do a history of the Earth, and even in geologically, what is the Earth? It's like 4 billion years old, I guess. And in recent times, if we look at it from those standpoints, we've had coming and going of ice ages. No one can prove scientifically exactly where are we in that right now. And if we start looking at things like cap and trade, which some of our state officials have supported in the past, and we start looking at how that's going to impact, I think they're using the whole environmental deal and global warming just to be an excuse for the redistribution of wealth and controlling how that operates. So I think we need to get rid of cap and trade, and until they have some hard science that clearly demonstrates this threat, then I think we give it all the the justice it's due, which right now is pretty minimal. I think there's no conclusive evidence that's been peer-reviewed and agreed upon by a majority of truly credentialed experts.
What then is the purpose of climate change regulations?
I think it's it's kind of like Agenda 21. We hide everything behind it's for the environment, it's going to be good for your kids and your grandkids, and the reality is it's to promote an agenda, and in this particular case, perhaps the redistribution of wealth, and it goes back to what cap and trade was trying to do, and that's just not what we need to be doing. We need hard science that is confirmed, at least by credentialed experts with a plurality, and I'm not seeing any of that. It's an agenda that's not for our well-being. I think in many ways it's science that's not been proven and agreed upon by the majority of experts. And until we have that, it's just a theory that we should not operate on.
Well, you've pretty much answered this, but I'm obligated to ask this next question because everyone else was asked. In attending county commission meetings over the past year, our members have been shocked to discover the implementation of global governance throughout all facets of our local government. Terms such as smart growth, green print, and sustainable development indicate UN-based policies being implemented locally under the general umbrella of Agenda 21. What do you know about Agenda 21?
You know, it's interesting. In the NFL, you ever hear the coaches say it's a copycat league? Well, I'm learning real quick running for office is a copycat league. I've been talking about Agenda 21 since last summer, on tape, on videos. You know, the one world concept and the UN and George Soros. A lot of people, and I've had face-to-face discussions with Pam Bondi about this, and she is aware of it. And I have told the governor to the point that he said, Mike, you say it to me again and I'm going to quit taking your calls. Poor guy, I beat him to death. So he's aware too. But I mean, we got to stop this. I mean, when you really look at it from a constitutional standpoint, I think there's a serious question if it's even constitutional, where they're bypassing our federal government, state governments, and coming right to our communities. But the long-term idea is to decrease population, tell us where we're going to live. That's what a part of the high-speed rail was, and then we start looking at how the treaties come into this. And with the UN, the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to use the UN treaties not just for Agenda 21 to dictate our living conditions, but they're going to try to take away our guns as well. So we got to be way out in front of this and get our public well educated.
And the last question. Are there any conditions under which international law should be considered or applied to the U.S.? For example, for gun control, Sharia law, or parental rights?
No.